Did you know Elvis Presley never wrote a single one of his songs? Or that his iconic leg shake began as a way to hide his nervousness on stage? The song that made him a national star, Heartbreak Hotel, was based on a real suicide note printed in a newspaper. And one of his most rebellious rock anthems was recorded with a gospel quartet who thought the lyrics were ridiculous. The 1950s was a decade of clean-cut images and deep, hidden anxieties. It was a time of booming suburbs and the looming threat of atomic bombs. It was a society demanding conformity while a new generation yearned to break free. And somehow a truck driver from Tupelo, Mississippi gave that entire contradictory decade a voice. His songs were more than just hits. They were a reflection of the times, capturing the loneliness, the joy, the rebellion, and the innocence of an America in transition. Number 20, how did a song about loneliness become a national sensation? Elvis Presley's first recording session for RCA Records took place on January 10th, 1956 in Nashville. He had been with Sun Records, a small Memphis label, but RCA paid an unprecedented $40,000 for his contract. The pressure was immense. The first song they recorded that day was I Got a Woman. The second was Heartbreak Hotel. Mayborn Axton, a high school teacher and part-time songwriter, had pitched the song to Elvis. She got the idea from a Miami Herald newspaper article about a man who destroyed all his identity papers and left a one-line suicide note, I walk a lonely street. Axton and her co-writer Tommy Durden imagined a hotel at the end of that lonely street. They pictured a place filled with broken-hearted people. When Elvis heard the demo, he knew he had to record it. The RCA executives in Nashville hated it. They thought it was morbid, strange, and completely wrong for the kid they just paid a fortune for. They called it a morbid mess. But Elvis insisted. He had a vision for the song. He wanted it to sound different from anything else on the radio. He slowed the tempo way down. He wanted it to echo, to sound empty and vast. The studio they were in, RCA's Nashville studio, was not built for that kind of sound. It was a former television studio with dry acoustics. To create the echo effect, the engineer, Bob Ferris, set up a speaker at one end of a long hallway and a microphone at the other. They piped the sound of Elvis's voice and Scotty Moore's guitar down the hall and re-recorded the reverberation. This created the haunting, cavernous sound that defines the record. It was a primitive, do-it-yourself solution that ended up being iconic. The song didn't sound like rock and roll. It didn't sound like country. It sounded like something new, something darker. The lyrics talk about a place where broken-hearted lovers cry away their gloom. The bellhop's tears are on his shoes. The desk clerk is dressed in black. It's a bleak picture. And this bleakness is exactly why it captured the spirit of the 1950s. On the surface, the 50s were about prosperity and optimism. The war was over. Families were moving to the suburbs. Everyone was buying new cars and televisions. But underneath that shiny surface was a deep current of anxiety. The Cold War was raging. People were building bomb shelters in their backyards. There was a sense of unease, of loneliness in the new, sprawling suburbs. This was the era of the man in the gray flannel suit, a term for the suburban dad who felt trapped and anonymous in his corporate job. Movies like Rebel Without a Cause showed teenagers who felt misunderstood and isolated. Heartbreak Hotel tapped directly into that hidden feeling. It gave a voice to the quiet desperation that was simmering beneath the perfect exterior of American life. It said that it was okay to feel lonely, that even in a time of great prosperity, people still felt lost. The song went to #1 on the charts. It sold over 1 million copies. It proved the RCA executives wrong and established Elvis as not just a singer, but an artist with a unique and sometimes dark point of view. It was the sound of the other 1950s, the one people didn't talk about at dinner parties. Number 19, was it just a cover song or a cultural explosion? Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller, two white teenagers from Los Angeles, wrote Hound Dog in about 15 minutes. They wrote it in 1952 for a powerful blues singer named Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton. Her version is a slow, grinding blues song. It's about a woman kicking a no good man out of her house. It's raw and full of attitude. It was a hit on the R&B charts in 1953. 3 years later, Elvis Presley was in Las Vegas. He saw a lounge act called Freddie Bell and the Bellboys. They were performing a comedic, sped-up version of Hound Dog. Elvis loved the energy of their performance. He decided to record it himself using their faster arrangement as a starting point. On July 2nd, 1956, Elvis and his band went into RCA's New York studio to record it. The session was difficult. Elvis was a perfectionist. He couldn't get the sound he wanted. He made the band do 31 takes of the song. His backup singers, the Jordanaires, a respected gospel group, hated the song. Gordon Stoker, the group's leader, later said they thought the lyrics, "You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time," were the stupidest they had ever heard. But Elvis pushed on. He wasn't just covering a song. He was reinventing it. He took the anger of Big Mama Thornton's original and the energy of Freddie Bell's version and added his own unique ingredient, pure, unadulterated rebellion. His version is an explosion. It's driven by DJ Fontana's frantic drumming and Scotty Moore's sharp, aggressive guitar solo. Elvis's voice is a snarl. It's not about a no-good man anymore. It's about defiance. The performance that truly ignited the firestorm came on television. On June 5th, 1956, Elvis performed Hound Dog on The Milton Berle Show. He sang it fast and hard, and then during the instrumental break, he slowed it down. He started to move his hips in a way that television audiences had never seen before. The camera zoomed in. The teenagers in the audience screamed, and the next day, America's parents and critics erupted. The New York Times called him an unattractive, untalented, and vulgar performer. A Catholic church publication warned that he was a danger to the nation's youth. The controversy was so intense that when he appeared on The Steve Allen Show a few weeks later, they made him sing Hound Dog to an actual basset hound while wearing a tuxedo. It was an attempt to humiliate him, to make him seem silly and harmless. But it was too late. The genie was out of the bottle. Hound Dog became the anthem for a new generation. It perfectly captured the generational divide of the 1950s. The parents saw something dangerous and immoral. The kids saw freedom. They saw someone who was not afraid to be himself, to move his body, to express his energy. The song represented a break from the stiff, formal culture of their parents. It was loud, it was fast, and it was a little bit dangerous. It was the sound of rules being broken. The record was a massive success. It was released as a double A side with Don't Be Cruel. It went to number one on the pop, R&B, and country charts simultaneously, something that had never happened before. It proved that this new music, this rock and roll, was not just a fad, it was a cultural force, and Hound Dog was its battle cry. It was the sound of a revolution starting, not in a government building, but on a television screen and a 45 RPM record. Number 18, could a simple song change the rules of popular music? Otis Blackwell was a struggling African-American songwriter in New York. In 1956, he wrote a song called Don't Be Cruel. He sold it, along with 5 other songs, for a flat fee of $25 each. He had no idea that one of those songs would become one of the biggest hits in history. And Elvis recorded Don't Be Cruel on the same day as Hound Dog, July 2nd, 1956. While Hound Dog was a struggle, Don't Be Cruel came together quickly. They nailed it in 28 takes. The song is a masterpiece of simplicity. The lyrics are straightforward. A guy is asking his girlfriend to stop playing games and treat him right. The melody is catchy and easy to sing along to. But the magic is in the production. The sound is completely unique. It has a heavy, percussive backbeat that was unusual for the time. The Jordanaires provide a smooth, almost doo-wop style background vocal. Elvis's vocal is relaxed and playful. He uses hiccups and stutters, little vocal tricks that made the song feel personal and spontaneous. He even bangs on the back of his guitar to add to the rhythm. You can hear the slap of the strings against the wood. It feels like you're in the room with them. Don't Be Cruel was released as the B-side to Hound Dog. In the 1950s, the B-side was usually a throwaway song, a filler track, but radio DJs started playing Don't Be Cruel just as much as Hound Dog. The public loved it. Billboard magazine, the music industry's trade publication, had a problem. They had separate charts for pop, R&B, and country music. And they had a chart for the most played songs on jukeboxes. Hound Dog and Don't Be Cruel were both so popular that they were essentially tied for number one. For the first and only time in its history, Billboard credited both sides of the single as a number one hit. The single stayed at the top of the charts for 11 weeks, a record that stood for 36 years. The song's success captured a key shift in the 1950s music industry. It was the rise of the teenager as a dominant economic force. Before, Elvis popular music was mostly for adults. It was big bands, crooners like Frank Sinatra and Perry Como, but teenagers in the post-war boom had their own money from allowances and part-time jobs. And they wanted their own music. They didn't want the smooth, sophisticated music of their parents. They wanted something with a beat, something they could dance to. Don't Be Cruel was the perfect song for this new market. It was simple enough to be relatable, but it had a cool, rebellious edge. It wasn't angry like Hound Dog. It was charming. It presented a new kind of masculinity. Elvis wasn't a tough guy. He was vulnerable. He was pleading with his girl, don't be cruel to a heart that's true. This vulnerability was incredibly appealing to teenage girls who made up the core of his fan base. The song's relaxed, confident swagger also reflected the growing confidence of American youth in the 1950s. They were the first generation to grow up with television and a sense of shared national culture. They felt like they were part of something new and exciting. Don't Be Cruel was their soundtrack. It was the sound of a summer romance, of a dance at the sock hop, of a new kind of freedom. It was a simple song that helped to redefine what a pop hit could be and who it was for. Number 17 was the most controversial song of the decade. The song Jailhouse Rock was written by Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller for the 1957 Elvis movie of the same name. The movie's plot was a classic 1950s tale of a misunderstood youth. Elvis plays Vince Everett, a young man who is sent to prison for accidentally killing a man in a bar fight. In prison, he learns to play guitar and becomes a star. Leiber and Stoller were given the script and told to write the songs. They had never written for a movie before. They locked themselves in a hotel room and wrote 4 songs in one afternoon, including Jailhouse Rock. The lyrics are playful and full of slang. They describe a wild party in the county jail. The warden threw a party in the county jail. The prison band was there and they began to wail. The song name drops real people like Shifty Henry, a well-known Los Angeles musician, to give it an air of authenticity. The music itself is pure, high-energy rock and roll. It has a driving piano part, a blaring saxophone, and a powerful, stomping beat. And Elvis recorded the song on April 30th, 1957. He was at the peak of his powers. His voice is raw and aggressive. He shouts, growls, and sneers his way through the lyrics. The song perfectly captured the 1950s panic over juvenile delinquency. After World War II, there was a widespread fear among adults that the nation's teenagers were out of control. Movies like The Wild One with Marlon Brando and Blackboard Jungle depicted teenagers as violent, disrespectful rebels. There were headlines about gang fights and teenage crime. Jailhouse Rock played right into this fear, but it did so with a wink and a smile. It made rebellion look fun. The song and the movie presented a sanitized version of the bad boy archetype. Elvis's character goes to jail, but he's not really a bad guy. He's just misunderstood. He's a rebel with a good heart. This was a fantasy that appealed to millions of teenagers who felt constrained by the strict social rules of the 1950s. They might not have been criminals, but they understood the desire to break free, to have a party where the band was jumping and the joint began to swing. The most iconic part of Jailhouse Rock is not the song itself, but the dance sequence from the movie. And choreographed by Elvis himself, the scene is a stunning piece of performance art. Elvis, dressed in a prison uniform, slides down a pole, crawls across the floor and leads a group of inmates in a high-energy, synchronized dance. His movements are sharp, angular, and incredibly modern. It was unlike anything anyone had seen in a mainstream Hollywood movie. The dance sequence was a visual representation of the song's rebellious energy. It was physical, it was aggressive, and it was undeniably cool. The song was a massive hit. It went to #1 in the United States and became the first song in British history to enter the charts at #1. But it also deepened the controversy surrounding Elvis. Critics and parents saw the jailhouse rock performance as further evidence of his corrupting influence. They saw a celebration of criminality and a display of vulgarity. But for teenagers, it was a declaration of independence. It was a message that you could be an outsider, you could be a rebel, and you could still be the hero. It was the ultimate 1950s fantasy, set to a rock and roll beat. Number 16, How Did a Civil War Song Tame? The King of Rock and Roll. In the fall of 1956, Elvis Presley was the most controversial figure in America. He was the king of rock and roll, a snarling, hip-shaking rebel. But Hollywood had plans for him. They wanted to turn him into a movie star, a romantic leading man like James Dean or Marlon Brando. His first movie was a Western called The Reno Brothers. Elvis was cast as the youngest of 4 brothers. During production, the producers realized what a huge star they had on their hands. They changed the title of the movie to Love Me Tender, the name of the film's theme song. They also rewrote the script to give Elvis a bigger part and to have his character die at the end, a classic tragic hero move. The song Love Me Tender was not a rock and roll song. It was a soft, gentle ballad. The melody was based on a Civil War song from 1861 called Ora Lee. Ken Darby, the film's musical director, adapted the old melody and wrote new lyrics. Because of his contract, Elvis was given a co-writing credit, though he did not actually write any of it. Elvis recorded Love Me Tender in August 1956. He sang it with a simple acoustic guitar accompaniment. His voice is soft and sincere. It's a world away from the aggressive growl of hound dog or jailhouse rock. It showed a different side of Elvis, a vulnerable, romantic side. RCA and the movie studio knew they had a hit. They decided to debut the song on television before the movie was released. On September 9th, 1956, Elvis made his first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show, the most popular variety show in the country. Sullivan had initially refused to book Elvis, calling him unfit for a family audience. But after Elvis drew huge ratings on other shows, Sullivan changed his mind. He paid Elvis a record-breaking $50,000 for 3 appearances. For his first appearance, the producers made a controversial decision. To appease the critics, they filmed Elvis only from the waist up. They wanted to hide his infamous hip shaking. And Elvis opened his set with Don't Be Cruel and Ready Teddy. Then, he introduced his new song. He told the audience, "This is a song from our first movie. I think you'll like it." He sang Love Me Tender with a quiet intensity. The camera was tight on his face. The studio audience was completely silent. When he finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, followed by an explosion of screams and applause. The performance was a national event. Over 60 million people, a staggering 82.6% of the television audience, tuned in to watch. The reaction was overwhelming. RCA received over 1 million advance orders for the single, an industry record at the time. The song went to #1 before the movie was even in theaters. Love Me Tender perfectly captured the dual nature of the 1950s and of Elvis's own appeal. The decade was about rebellion, but it was also about romance and conformity. Teenagers wanted to rock and roll on Saturday night, but they also dreamed of going steady and getting married. And Elvis was able to be both the dangerous rebel and the sensitive romantic hero. Love Me Tender showed his soft side. It made him safe. It made him acceptable to parents who were terrified of his rock and roll image. It proved that he was not just a fad, but a versatile entertainer who could appeal to everyone. You know, it was the sound of the rebel putting on a suit and in doing so conquering the world. Number 15 was the sound of a nation's nervous energy. George David Weiss was a professional songwriter who worked in the Brill Building in New York, the center of the music publishing industry. In 1956, a music publisher asked him to write a song based on a popular slang phrase at the time, all shook up. Weiss wrote the song, but he felt it was missing something. He took it to Otis Blackwell, the same songwriter who had written Don't Be Cruel. Blackwell didn't like the song at first, but he reworked it, adding his signature rhythm and style. According to Blackwell, Elvis also contributed to the song's final structure when they were in the studio, and as a result, he was given a co-writing credit. Elvis recorded All Shook Up on January 12th, 1957. The recording is a perfect example of his mid-50s sound. It's built around a simple, driving beat. DJ Fontana, his drummer, plays a frantic, relentless rhythm on his snare drum. Elvis himself slaps the back of his acoustic guitar, adding a percussive clatter to the track. The piano, played by Elvis, pounds out a simple chord progression. The song has an incredible sense of forward momentum. It feels like it's constantly on the verge of spinning out of control. Elvis's vocal performance is a marvel of nervous energy. He sings about being in love, but it sounds more like a panic attack. My hands are shaky and my knees are weak. I can't seem to stand on my own 2 feet. He hiccups, he stutters, he sounds like he's about to jump out of his skin. The lyrics are a catalog of physical symptoms. I'm in love. I'm all shook up. This feeling of being all shook up was a perfect metaphor for the 1950s. On one hand, it was a time of great excitement and change. The economy was booming. There were new technologies, new music, new fashions. It was an exciting time to be young, but it was also a time of great anxiety. The threat of nuclear war was very real. School children practiced duck and cover drills, hiding under their desks in case of a bomb. There was a fear of communism, a sense of paranoia that was fueled by politicians like Senator Joseph McCarthy. This combination of excitement and anxiety created a kind of national nervous energy. All Shook Up captured that feeling perfectly. It was a song about the thrilling, terrifying feeling of first love, but it resonated on a much deeper level. The song's frantic pace and Elvis's jittery performance mirrored the jitters of the nation. It was the sound of a generation that was both excited about the future and terrified of it. The song was an instant and massive hit. It went to #1 on the pop, R&B, and country charts. It stayed at the top of the Billboard Top 100 for 8 weeks. It became one of Elvis's signature songs. It was a simple 3-chord rock and roll song, but it managed to tap into the complex emotional landscape of its time. It was the sound of a teenager's crush and the sound of a nation holding its breath. It was the sound of being alive and scared and thrilled all at the same time. Number 14, how did a mistake create a rock and roll masterpiece? In July of 1954, Elvis Presley was a nervous 19-year-old kid trying to make a record. He was at Sun Studio in Memphis, a small, independent recording studio run by a visionary producer named Sam Phillips. And Sam was looking for something new. He was looking for a white singer who could sing with the feeling and soul of a black blues artist. He thought Elvis might be the one, but the session was not going well. They had tried recording a number of slow ballads, but nothing was clicking. Elvis sounded stiff and nervous. The session was about to end in failure. During a break, Elvis picked up his guitar and started fooling around. He started playing an old blues song by Arthur Big Boy Crudup called That's All Right. He wasn't trying to record it. He was just blowing off steam. He sped the song up, singing it with a loose, energetic rhythm. Bill Black, the bass player, joined in, slapping his upright bass to create a percussive beat. Scotty Moore, the guitarist, started playing a fast, country-style guitar riff over the top. Sam Phillips was in the control room. When he heard what they were doing, he stuck his head out the door and said, "What are you doing?" They said they didn't know. Sam said, "Well, back up, try to find a place to start, and do it again." He started the tape machine. What they recorded in the next few minutes was not quite blues, not quite country, and not quite pop. It was something completely new. It was raw, it was exciting, and it was spontaneous. Elvis's voice was young and full of energy. Scotty Moore's guitar was clean and bright. Bill Black's slapping bass acted like a drum, driving the song forward. There were no drums on the recording. That percussive sound was all from the bass. The creation of this sound was an accident, a moment of spontaneous creation. But it perfectly captured a major cultural shift happening in the 1950s American South. The South was a segregated society, but its music was not. The white country musicians were listening to black blues and R&B on the radio. Black musicians were influenced by the sounds of country and gospel. In places like Memphis, these musical traditions were blending together, creating new hybrid styles. That's All Right was the perfect example of this cultural fusion. It was a black blues song performed by a white singer with a country-inflected voice, backed by a band that sounded like a sped-up country group. Sam Phillips knew he had something special. He took the record to a local DJ named Dewey Phillips, no relation. Dewey played the song on his popular radio show Red Hot and Blue. The station's switchboard lit up with calls. People wanted to know who the singer was. Many people assumed he was black. When Dewey revealed that Elvis was a white graduate of Humes High School, the reaction was even stronger. The record sold out in Memphis almost immediately. It wasn't a national hit, but it was a regional sensation. It was the beginning of everything. That's All Right was the sound of a cultural wall coming down. It was the sound of different traditions colliding and creating something new and powerful. It was the birth of rock and roll, not in a corporate boardroom, but in a small studio on a hot July night, completely by accident. Number 13, could a train song redefine American mythology? Junior Parker was a blues singer and harmonica player from Memphis. In 1953, he and his band, the Blue Flames, recorded a song for Sun Records called Mystery Train. The song was a slow, atmospheric blues number. It had a haunting quality. The lyrics used the image of a train to talk about love and loss. Train I ride, 16 coaches long. Well, that long black train got my baby and gone. The train is a classic symbol in American folklore and music. It represents travel, freedom, escape, and the relentless passage of time. Sam Phillips, the owner of Sun Records, wrote part of the song, though he gave the credit to Parker. 2 years later, in July 1955, Elvis Presley recorded his version of Mystery Train at Sun Studio. It was his fifth and final single for the label before he moved to RCA. His version is completely different from Junior Parker's. He transformed the song from a mournful blues into a piece of rock and roll mythology. Elvis's version is faster and more optimistic. He keeps the haunting, ghostly feel of the original, but he adds a sense of power and inevitability. The song starts with Scotty Moore's eerie, echo-drenched guitar. Bill Black's bass provides a steady chugging rhythm, like the wheels of a train on the track. Elvis's voice is confident and strong. He sounds like he is in control of the train, not just a passenger on it. The biggest change comes at the end of the song. In the original, the train takes the singer's baby away, and that's the end of the story. It's a song of loss, but Elvis adds a new verse. Train has been here and gone. Well, it's coming back. It won't be long. In his version, the train that took his baby away is going to bring her back. He turns a story of loss into a story of triumph. This change is incredibly significant. It reflects the optimistic, can-do spirit of the 1950s. This was the era of the American dream, the belief that with hard work and determination, anything was possible. It was a time of confidence and forward momentum. Elvis's Mystery Train captured that spirit. It took an old, sad story and gave it a happy ending. It was about taking control of your own destiny. The recording itself has a legendary quality. The use of tape echo, a signature of Sam Phillips's production style, makes the record sound vast and timeless. It sounds like it's coming from a great distance, like a broadcast from the heart of America. Music historian Grail Marcus wrote a famous book called Mystery Train, in which he argued that this recording was a pivotal moment in American culture. He saw it as the point where the old, weird America of folk songs and blues met the new, modern America of rock and roll and consumer culture. The song was a hit on the national country charts, making it Elvis's first #1 hit of any kind. It was the sound of a young artist taking the past and reshaping it into something new and exciting. It was a traditional American story retold for a new generation. It was the sound of the 1950s, a decade that believed in its own power to rewrite the ending of the story. Number 12, How Did a Pair of Shoes Kickstart a National Craze? And Carl Perkins was a rockabilly singer from Tennessee. He was one of the first artists signed to Sun Records along with Elvis. In late 1955, Perkins was playing a show when he saw a boy in the audience get angry at his date for scuffing his new blue suede shoes. Perkins thought the boy's priorities were funny. He wrote a song about it on an old potato sack. The song was Blue Suede Shoes. It had a simple, powerful message. You can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoes. Perkins recorded the song in December 1955. It was a huge hit, one of the first rock and roll songs to cross over and hit the pop, R&B, and country charts. It was on its way to becoming an even bigger hit, but Perkins was in a serious car accident that put him in the hospital for months. While he was recovering, Elvis Presley recorded his own version of the song. Elvis had promised Sam Phillips that he wouldn't record a cover of Blue Suede Shoes while Perkins' version was still climbing the charts. But his new label, RCA, was eager for him to record his own version to capitalize on the song's popularity. Elvis recorded it on January 30th, 1956. Elvis's version is faster and more aggressive than Perkins' original. It's driven by DJ Fontana's powerful drumming, something the Sun recordings didn't have. Scotty Moore's guitar solo is a classic of the rock and roll style. And Elvis attacks the vocals with a swaggering confidence. While Perkins' version sounded like a friendly warning, Elvis's version sounds like a threat. Even though Elvis's version was a hit, he never felt comfortable with it. He knew it was Carl Perkins' song, and he felt like he was stealing his friend's thunder. He rarely performed the song live in his early years. But the song, and particularly Elvis's powerful version, perfectly captured a new and important aspect of 1950s life, the rise of consumer culture and teenage identity. After the rationing and scarcity of the war years, the 1950s was a decade of abundance. For the first time, teenagers had disposable income, and they spent it on things that helped them define their own style, their own identity, separate from their parents. They bought clothes, records, and cars. Blue suede shoes became a symbol of this new teenage identity. They were flashy, they were a little bit rebellious, and they were something that your parents probably wouldn't wear. The song's lyrics, which, put a pair of shoes above everything else. You can burn my house, steal my car, drink my liquor from an old fruit jar, was a perfect expression of teenage priorities. It was a humorous exaggeration, but it contained a kernel of truth. For a teenager in the 1950s, your personal style, your look, was incredibly important. It was how you showed the world who you were. The song was a declaration of independence. It said that a teenager's world, with its own rules and its own status symbols, was just as valid as the adult world. Elvis, with his cool clothes and his defiant attitude, was the ultimate symbol of this new teenage style. Blue Suede Shoes became his unofficial anthem. It was the sound of a generation using fashion and music to create a world of their own. Number 11. Was rock and roll really a threat to the old ways? Roy Brown was an R&B singer who had a hit in 1947 with a song called Good Rockin' Tonight. The song was an up-tempo blues number with a strong backbeat. It was one of the first songs to use the word rock in a musical context, not just as a slang term. The lyrics were a call to party. I heard the news. There's good rockin' tonight. In 1954, Elvis Presley recorded a cover of the song for Sun Records. It was the A side of his second single, like he did with That's All Right, Elvis, completely transformed the song. He took Roy Brown's R&B shuffle and turned it into a frantic, high-octane piece of rockabilly. The recording is pure energy. Elvis's voice is high and excited. He stutters and yelps. He sounds like a man who has just discovered something amazing and can't wait to tell everyone about it. Scotty Moore's guitar playing is sharp and percussive. Bill Black's slapping bass provides the driving rhythm. The whole thing sounds like it's about to fly apart at any second. The most important change Elvis made was to the lyrics. The original song was a straightforward party anthem. Elvis kept the chorus, but he sang it with a new sense of urgency and excitement. He made the song sound like a secret message, a piece of news being spread from person to person. Have you heard the news? Everybody's rockin' tonight. This sense of a new movement, a new community being formed, was central to the early rock and roll experience. It was a sound that belonged to the young. It was shared on the radio, at sock hops, and in record stores. It was a code that adults didn't understand, and this is why it was seen as a threat. Good Rockin' Tonight captured the spirit of rebellion that so terrified the establishment in the 1950s. The word rockin' itself had suggestive connotations. To many adults, it was a thinly veiled reference to something more physical. They heard this wild, energetic music, and they saw it as a direct challenge to the conservative social and moral values of the time. The reaction from the older generation was one of fear and condemnation. They called rock and roll the devil's music. They claimed it would lead to moral decay and juvenile delinquency. Church groups held record burnings. Some radio stations refused to play it. This moral panic was a key feature of the mid-1950s. It was a clash between a generation that had survived the Depression and World War II and wanted stability and order, and a new generation that had grown up in prosperity and wanted freedom and excitement. Good Rockin' Tonight was the sound of that clash. It was a joyful, exuberant celebration of a new kind of music and a new way of life. To the kids who heard it on the radio, it was a promise of fun and freedom. To the parents who heard it coming from their children's bedrooms, it was the sound of a world they no longer controlled. It was a simple party song that became a front line in a culture war. Number 10, how did a toy become a symbol of tamed rebellion? In 1957, Elvis was the biggest star in the world, but his image was starting to change. The dangerous, rebellious rock and roller of 1956 was being softened for a wider audience. He was making movies, and the movies required songs that were less threatening and more romantic. His second film was called Loving You. For the movie, songwriters Cal Mann and Bernie Lowe wrote a song called Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear. The song is a light, charming pop tune. It has a simple, bouncy rhythm and a catchy melody. The lyrics are sweet and innocent. Elvis isn't a hound dog anymore. He's a teddy bear. I don't want to be a tiger, because tigers play too rough. I don't want to be a lion, because lions ain't the kind you love enough. Just want to be your teddy bear. The song was a carefully crafted piece of pop music, designed to be as commercial and inoffensive as possible. Elvis recorded it in early 1957. His performance is professional and polished. He sings it with a playful charm. It's a world away from the raw, chaotic energy of his Sun recordings. The song perfectly captured a major shift in both Elvis's career and in 1950s youth culture. The initial shock of rock and roll was starting to wear off. The music was becoming more commercialized, more integrated into the mainstream. The rebel was becoming a product. The teddy bear itself was a perfect symbol for this change. The teddy bear was named after President Theodore Teddy Roosevelt in the early 1900s. It was a symbol of childhood innocence and comfort. By casting himself as a teddy bear, Elvis was signaling a change. He was no longer the dangerous outsider. He was now a safe, lovable object of affection. The song was a massive success. It went to number 1 on all 3 major charts. The movie was also a hit, and most importantly, it sparked a merchandising craze. For the first time, Elvis's image was being used to sell products directly to teenagers. There were Elvis Presley lipstick colors, hound dog orange, charm bracelets, and of course, teddy bears. Millions of them were sold. This was the beginning of modern pop music merchandising. It was the moment when the teen idol became a brand. The 1950s was the decade that invented the modern teenager as a consumer category. Companies realized that young people had money and influence, and they started marketing products directly to them. Let Me Be Your Teddy Bear was the perfect soundtrack for this new commercial reality. It was a sweet, catchy song that sold a sweet, cuddly image. It showed that the rebellion of rock and roll could be packaged, marketed, and sold. It was the sound of the wildcat being put in a cage, a very comfortable and profitable cage. For his original fans, it might have been a sign that their hero was selling out. But for the millions of new fans he gained, it was the sound of a new kind of romance, a safe and sweet alternative to the confusing and often scary world of adult relationships. It was the taming of rock and roll, and it was incredibly successful. Number 9, Can you hear the sound of two worlds colliding? Bill Monroe was the father of bluegrass music. In 1946, he wrote and recorded a song called Blue Moon of Kentucky. It was a slow, mournful waltz sung in a high, lonesome voice. It's a classic piece of traditional country music, a lament for a lost love under the Kentucky moon. It was a staple of the Grand Ole Opry, the heart of the country music establishment in Nashville. In 1954, Elvis Presley and his band were in Sun's studio trying to find a B-side for their first single, That's All Right. Sam Phillips wanted something that would appeal to the country music audience. Bill Black, the bass player, started singing Blue Moon of Kentucky in a high, cartoonish voice, trying to imitate Bill Monroe. He was just joking around, but Elvis joined in, and they started playing the song, but not as a slow waltz. They transformed it into a frantic, up-tempo rockabilly song. They played it in a fast 4/4 signature. Scotty Moore added a driving guitar riff. Elvis sang it with a wild, almost manic energy. He added hiccups and yelps. It was a complete reinvention of the song. Sam Phillips recorded their spontaneous performance. When he played it back, they knew they had something special. They had taken a sacred text of country music and turned it into something completely different. It was both respectful and rebellious. The record was released with the bluesy That's All Right on one side and the country-infused Blue Moon of Kentucky on the other. It was a perfect representation of the two traditions that were merging to create rock and roll. The reaction from the traditional country music world was mixed. Some people were horrified. They saw it as a desecration of a classic song. They thought Elvis was mocking Bill Monroe. But Bill Monroe himself loved it. He understood that Elvis was not making fun of the song, but celebrating it in a new way. Monroe even recorded his own version of the song in a faster tempo, inspired by Elvis's arrangement. Blue Moon of Kentucky captures the musical culture clash of the 1950s better than almost any other song. It was the sound of the old, rural America meeting the new, urban America. It was the sound of tradition being supercharged with youthful energy. On one side, you had the Grand Ole Opry with its strict rules and its reverence for the past. On the other, you had Sun Studio, a place of experimentation and rule-breaking. Elvis's record bridged that gap. It showed that you could love the old music and still create something new. It was a song that could be played on a country radio station and a rhythm and blues station. It was a unifying force, even as it was causing controversy. It was the sound of a musical revolution, not just in the rhythm, but in the attitude. It was the sound of a new generation taking the music of their parents and making it their own. Number 8, What Does It Sound Like When Too Much Is Never Enough? By 1957, Elvis Presley was living a life that was almost unimaginable just a few years earlier. He was the most famous entertainer in the world. He had hit records, hit movies, and a level of wealth and fame that was unprecedented. He had moved from a small apartment in Memphis to a sprawling mansion called Graceland. He was surrounded by an entourage of friends and family. He could have anything he wanted. This new reality of fame and excess was a central part of the 1950s American dream. The decade was defined by a post-war economic boom. People had more money, more leisure time, and access to more consumer goods than ever before. There was a sense that the possibilities were limitless. The national mood was one of abundance. The song Too Much, recorded in September 1956, became an unintentional anthem for this new age of excess. The song was written by Bernard Weinman and Lee Rosenberg. It's a driving, piano-heavy rock and roll number. The lyrics are about a man who is overwhelmed by his love for a woman. You know I'm a fellow who's willing to try, but I'm a-telling you, honey, you're the reason why I'm saying too much. But the song's title and its frantic energy took on a larger meaning in the context of Elvis's life and the culture of the 1950s. The performance itself feels like an overload. The piano is pounding, the drums are crashing, the Jordanaires are wailing in the background. And Elvis's vocal is powerful and almost frantic. He sounds like a man on a roller coaster barely hanging on. It's the sound of exhilaration mixed with a hint of desperation. It's the sound of having everything you ever wanted and not knowing what to do with it. This feeling of too much was a new phenomenon for many Americans in the 1950s. They had gone from the scarcity of the Great Depression and the rationing of World War II to a world of endless choices. There were too many new cars to choose from, too many new appliances to buy, too many new television shows to watch. It was exciting, but it could also be overwhelming. Too much captured that feeling of sensory overload. It was a song about love, but it sounded like a song about consumption. It reflected a culture that was obsessed with more bigger cars, bigger houses, bigger stars. Elvis was the ultimate symbol of this new culture of too much. He had too many hits, too many fans, too much money. His life was a fantasy of consumption come true. The song went to #1 in early 1957. It was another smash hit in a long line of them. But it also hinted at the dark side of the American dream. The frantic energy of the song suggests that the pursuit of more can be exhausting and unsustainable. It was a party song, but it had an undercurrent of anxiety. It was the sound of a nation on a shopping spree, a nation that was having the time of its life, but was also secretly wondering if it was all happening too fast. Number 7, could the sound of a city be captured in a single song? New Orleans has always been a city with its own unique sound. It's a melting pot of musical traditions: blues, jazz, Cajun, Creole. In the 1950s, the city was a hotbed of rhythm and blues. Artists like Fats Domino and Little Richard were creating a powerful piano-driven sound that would be a major influence on rock and roll. In 1958, Elvis went to New Orleans to film King Creole, a movie that many critics consider to be his best. The film was based on a serious novel by Harold Robbins called A Stone for Danny Fisher. It was a gritty, atmospheric story about a young man trying to make it as a singer in the tough world of the New Orleans French Quarter. The soundtrack for the film was written by Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller, the same team that wrote Hound Dog and Jailhouse Rock. They were tasked with creating a set of songs that would capture the sound and spirit of New Orleans. The title track, King Creole, is a masterpiece of musical storytelling. The song is a powerful minor key blues number. It has a swaggering, menacing rhythm that perfectly evokes the dark, mysterious atmosphere of the French Quarter. The arrangement is complex and full of authentic New Orleans flavor. It features a big horn section, a walking bass line, and a wailing clarinet. Elvis's vocal performance is one of the best of his career. He sings with a raw power and a deep, bluesy feeling. He sounds tough, confident, and a little bit dangerous. He's not the playful boy of Teddy Bear or the nervous lover of All Shook Up. He's a man. The lyrics tell the story of a guitar-playing man who rules the streets of New Orleans. There's a man in New Orleans who plays rock and roll. He's a guitar man with a great big soul. He lays down a beat like a ton of coal. He's the king of the singers. They call him King Creole. The song is a piece of myth-making. It creates a larger-than-life character, a hero of the musical underground. King Creole perfectly captured a side of the 1950s that was often hidden from view. While much of the decade was defined by the clean, orderly world of the suburbs, there was also a fascination with the gritty, romantic world of the city. This was the era of film noir, of hard-boiled detectives and dangerous women. There was a sense that the city was a place of both opportunity and danger, a place where the rules of polite society didn't apply. King Creole is the sound of that other America. It's dark, it's sexy, and it's full of soul. It showed that Elvis was more than just a pop star. He was a legitimate musical artist who could handle complex, mature material. The song and the film marked a high point in his 1950s career. It was recorded just before he was drafted into the Army. It was his last great burst of creative energy before his career would be sidetracked. It was the sound of a young king at the height of his powers, claiming a city and its music as his own. Number 6, What Happens When a Kiss Feels Like a Volcano? By 1959, the first wave of rock and roll was starting to fade. The raw, rebellious energy of the mid-50s was being replaced by a more polished, pop-oriented sound. Elvis was in the Army stationed in Germany, but RCA Records had a stockpile of recordings that he had made before he left. They continued to release singles to keep his career alive while he was away. One of the last songs he recorded before his departure was A Big Hunk o' Love. The song was written by Aaron Schroeder and Sid Weich. It's a powerful piano-pounding rock and roll song that harks back to the high-energy sound of artists like Jerry Lee Lewis. The recording session, which took place in June 1958 in Nashville, was a legendary one. Elvis was joined by his usual band, but also by a group of Nashville's top session musicians, including the great pianist Floyd Kramer. The song is pure, explosive energy. Kramer's piano playing is wild and virtuosic. The rhythm is a powerful, stomping beat. The Jordanaires shout in the background, and at the center of it all is Elvis's voice. He sings with a power and a passion that is almost overwhelming. The lyrics are simple, but the delivery is anything but. He sings about a love that is so powerful it feels like a physical force. You're just a big hunk o' love, that's all. And I love you, baby. And I want you to be my doll. The key line in the song is, your kiss is like a volcano that's hot. This single line perfectly captures the spirit of late 1950s teenage passion. The 1950s was a decade of strict social rules, especially when it came to dating and relationships. And there was a lot of pressure on young people to be good, to control their feelings and desires. But underneath that surface of propriety, there was a volcano of emotion. Teenagers were discovering love and attraction for the first time, and it was a powerful, confusing, and sometimes scary experience. A Big Hunk o' Love gave voice to those feelings. It was a song that wasn't afraid to be loud, to be passionate, to be a little bit out of control. It said that it was okay to have these powerful feelings, that love wasn't something to be controlled, but something to be celebrated. The song was released in the summer of 1959 and went straight to #1. It proved that even while he was thousands of miles away in an army uniform, Elvis could still deliver the kind of high-energy rock and roll that his fans craved. The song was a powerful reminder of what made him a star in the first place. It was a blast of pure, unadulterated energy in a pop music scene that was becoming increasingly safe and predictable. It was a throwback to the wilder days of 1956 and 1957. It was the sound of a generation that was still learning to deal with the powerful new emotions of love and desire. It was the sound of a volcano, a perfect metaphor for the passionate, repressed heart of the 1950s teenager. #5. Could a white singer electrify a black man's song? Ray Charles was a genius. In 1954, he took an old gospel song, It Must Be Jesus, and rewrote the lyrics. He turned a song about the love of God into a song about the love of a woman. He called it I Got a Woman. The song was a sensation. It blended the passion and fervor of gospel music with the secular themes of rhythm and blues. It was one of the first songs to be called soul music. It was also controversial. Many people in the church were offended that he had taken a sacred song and turned it into a pop hit. But the song was a massive success on the R&B charts. It was a sound that was raw, emotional, and intensely personal. In early 1956, Elvis Presley recorded his own version of I Got a Woman. It was one of the first songs he recorded for his new label, RCA. He had been performing the song live for a while, and it was a crowd favorite. His version is a burst of pure energy. It's faster and more frantic than Ray Charles's original. Where Charles's version is smooth and soulful, Elvis's is raw and jagged. The recording captures the incredible energy of his live shows. DJ Fontana's drumming is a constant driving force. Scotty Moore's guitar solo is a wild rockabilly explosion, and Elvis's vocal is a marvel of excitement and confidence. He shouts, he laughs, he sounds like he is having the time of his life. At the end of the song, he famously ad-libs, "She's good to me." Yeah. It's a moment of pure, spontaneous joy. Elvis's version of I Got a Woman was a perfect example of the cultural exchange that was at the heart of rock and roll. It was a white singer from the South taking a song by a black innovator and introducing it to a massive new audience. This was a common practice in the 1950s. Many white artists like Pat Boone would record sanitized versions of R&B hits for the white pop market. But what Elvis did was different. He didn't sanitize the music, he amplified it. He took the passion and energy of the original and supercharged it with his own unique rockabilly style. The song perfectly captured the excitement of the mid-50s youthquake. It was a song about a man who was happy and in love, and it was expressed with a joy and an energy that was infectious. It was music to dance to shout along with. It was the sound of a generation that was feeling good about itself. It was also a testament to Elvis's incredible musical instincts. He had an uncanny ability to hear a song, no matter its origin, and see its potential as a rock and roll anthem. He was a bridge between the worlds of country, blues, and gospel. He took the most powerful elements of each and forged them into something new. I Got a Woman was not one of his biggest chart hits, but it was one of his most important recordings. It was the sound of musical boundaries being broken down. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated joy, a feeling that was in high supply in the optimistic years of the mid-1950s. Number 4, what does A Vow of Love sound like in the atomic age? The act of going steady was a serious business for teenagers in the 1950s. It was a formal commitment, a step below engagement, and it often came with a piece of jewelry. A boy would give a girl his class ring or an identification bracelet to show that she was his girl. It was a public declaration of a private relationship. This ritual of teenage romance was a key part of 1950s youth culture. It was a way for young people to practice the rituals of adulthood in a safe, controlled way. In 1958, songwriters Ben Wiseman and Aaron Schroeder wrote a song that tapped directly into this cultural phenomenon. The song was Wear My Ring Around Your Neck. The song is a mid-tempo rocker with a classic 1950s sound. It has a shuffling beat, a simple chord progression, and a catchy sing-along chorus. The lyrics are a direct proposition. The singer is asking his girlfriend to wear his ring as a symbol of their commitment. Won't you wear my ring up around your neck to tell the world I'm yours, by heck. The phrase, by heck, is a perfect 1950s touch, a bit of wholesome, parent-approved slang. Elvis recorded the song in February 1958. His performance is full of charm and confidence. He sounds like the ideal 1950s boyfriend. He's cool, he's a little bit of a rebel, but he's also sincere and ready to commit. The song was a huge hit, selling over 1 million copies. It resonated with teenagers because it spoke their language. It was about their lives, their rituals, their feelings. It took the serious business of going steady and turned it into a fun rock and roll anthem. But the song also reflects a deeper current in 1950s culture, the search for security in an insecure world. This was the atomic age. The threat of nuclear war was a constant low-level hum in the background of everyday life. People were looking for stability, for connection, for something to hold on to. The family was seen as the ultimate source of safety and security. Marriage rates were high, and people got married at a younger age than ever before. The ritual of going steady, and a song like Wear My Ring Around Your Neck was a reflection of this desire for commitment. It was a way of creating a small, safe world with another person, a world that could offer protection from the anxieties of the larger world. The ring around the neck was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a talisman, a symbol of a bond that could not be broken. The song captured this mix of youthful romance and deep-seated anxiety perfectly. It was a light, fun pop song on the surface, but underneath it was a powerful statement about the need for love and security in a dangerous time. It was the sound of two teenagers making a promise to each other, a promise that they hoped would last forever, even if they weren't sure what tomorrow would bring. Number 3, how could faith and rock and roll coexist? Elvis Presley grew up singing gospel music. It was his first musical love. He sang in church, and he and his family would attend all-night gospel sings. Even after he became the king of rock and roll, he never lost his love for spiritual music. In early 1957, at the height of his fame and controversy, he decided to record a gospel EP. It was a bold move. His fans wanted rock and roll, and his critics were accusing him of being a force of moral corruption. Recording a collection of religious songs was a way for him to make a statement about his faith and his musical roots. One of the songs he chose was There'll Be Peace in the Valley for Me. The song was written in 1937 by Thomas Dorsey, the father of black gospel music. It became a signature song for the great gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, and it was also a hit for the country singer Red Foley. It's a song of hope and faith, a vision of a peaceful afterlife where the bear will be gentle and the wolves will be tame. Elvis debuted the song on his third and final appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show on January 6, 1957. This was the famous From the Waist Up show. After singing his rock and roll hits, Elvis paused. He told the national television audience that he wanted to sing a song for them that was one of his personal favorites. He then delivered a powerful, heartfelt performance of Peace in the Valley. He sang it with a deep sincerity and a clear, strong voice. It was a stunning moment. The Devil in Disguise was singing a hymn on national television. The performance was a revelation for many people. It showed a side of Elvis that they had never seen before. It showed that the Rebel was also a man of faith. The public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. RCA was flooded with letters and calls from people who were moved by the performance. The song and the EP it came from became a huge seller. It was the first gospel record to sell over 1 million copies. The success of Peace in the Valley perfectly captured a central contradiction of the 1950s. It was a decade of rebellion and conformity, of sin and salvation. This was the era of the Billy Graham Crusades, which drew massive crowds across the country. There was a powerful religious revival sweeping the nation, happening at the exact same time as the rock and roll revolution. Many people saw these two forces as being in direct opposition, but Elvis proved that they could coexist. He was the living embodiment of the decade's spiritual and cultural contradictions. He could sing Hound Dog on Saturday night and Peace in the Valley on Sunday morning, and he meant them both. His love for gospel music was not a publicity stunt. It was a genuine and essential part of who he was as an artist and as a person. The song was a reminder that underneath the surface of 1950s conformity, and even underneath the surface of its rebellion, there was a deep spiritual longing. It was the sound of a nation searching for peace, both in this world and the next. Number 2, was this the toughest sound of the decade? Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller were known for writing fun, clever rock and roll songs, but in 1958, for the movie King Creole, they wrote a song that was different. It was tough, it was aggressive, and it was unapologetically bluesy. The song was Hard-Headed Woman. The song is built around a powerful stop-start riff that is pure rock and roll. The lyrics are a tribute to a series of famously difficult women from history, from Adam's Eve to the biblical Jezebel. The chorus is a declaration. I'm looking for a hard-headed woman, one who'll make me do my best. And if I find my hard-headed woman, I know the rest of my life will be blessed. It's a song that flips the script. Instead of complaining about a difficult woman, the singer is actively seeking one out. He wants a woman who will challenge him, who won't be a pushover. Elvis recorded the song with a ferocity that matched the lyrics. The track is full of blaring horns, pounding piano, and a driving beat. Elvis's voice is a powerful bluesy snarl. He sounds like he is enjoying every minute of it. The song was a massive hit. It became the first rock and roll single in history to be certified gold by the Recording Industry Association of America, RIA, meaning it sold over 1 million copies. But more than its commercial success, the song captured a shift in the way masculinity was being portrayed in the 1950s. The ideal 1950s man was the man in the gray flannel suit. He was stable, he was reliable, he was a good provider. But there was another version of masculinity that was emerging in popular culture, a tougher, more rebellious version. This was the masculinity of Marlon Brando in The Wild One, of James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. These were men who were not afraid of a challenge, who were not looking for an easy life. Hard-Headed Woman was the musical equivalent of this new, tougher masculinity. It was a rejection of the soft, domestic ideal. The singer doesn't want a sweet little angel. He wants a partner who is his equal, someone who will push him. This was a surprisingly modern and progressive idea for a pop song in the 1950s. The decade is often remembered for its traditional gender roles, for the ideal of the submissive housewife. But Hard-Headed Woman presented a different kind of relationship, one based on mutual strength and respect. It was a song that celebrated a woman's power, not her subservience. The song's raw, bluesy sound also signaled a return to the roots of rock and roll. By 1958, a lot of rock music had become sanitized and poppy. Hard-Headed Woman was a blast of raw, authentic energy. It was the sound of Elvis reconnecting with the blues and R&B music that had inspired him in the first place. It was the sound of the king of rock and roll reminding everyone that he was still the toughest guy in the room, and he was looking for a queen who was just as tough as he was. Number 1, what does the birth of a revolution sound like? The 1950s did not begin on January 1st, 1950. The decade of rock and roll and teenage rebellion began on a specific night in a specific place. It began on July 5th, 1954, at Sun Studio in Memphis, Tennessee. It began when a 19-year-old truck driver named Elvis Presley, a stand-up bass player named Bill Black, and a guitarist named Scotty Moore accidentally stumbled upon a new sound. The song they created, That's All Right, was more than just a record. It was a cultural event. The sound they made was a fusion. It was the sound of a black man's blues song being filtered through the sensibility of a white country singer. It was the sound of a rural tradition being electrified and sped up for a new urban audience. It was the sound of segregation breaking down, at least on the radio waves. The recording itself is a marvel of simplicity and energy. There are no drums. The rhythm is carried by Bill Black's percussive slapping of his bass and Elvis's own rhythm guitar. Scotty Moore's guitar solo is clean, concise, and full of a nervous, joyful energy, and Elvis's voice is a revelation. It's young, it's untrained, but it's full of a natural charisma and a deep love for the music he is singing. When the record was first played on the radio, it caused confusion and excitement. Was the singer black or white? What kind of music was this? It didn't fit into any of the existing categories. It wasn't country, it wasn't blues, it wasn't pop. It was something new. And this newness is what made it so powerful. It was the sound of a future that had not yet been defined. The 1950s was a decade caught between the past and the future. It was a time of deep respect for tradition and authority, but also a time of rapid technological and social change. The generation of teenagers who heard That's All Right on the radio were the first to grow up in this new world. They were looking for a soundtrack that reflected their own experience, a sound that was as new and exciting as the world they were living in. That's All Right was that sound. It was a declaration of independence from the old rules and the old categories. It was a sound that was full of hope, energy, and the promise of something new. The song was not a national hit. It was a local phenomenon, a secret shared by the kids in Memphis and the surrounding area, but the revolution it started would soon spread across the country and around the world. Every rock and roll song that came after it owes a debt to this one accidental magical recording. It was the spark that lit the fire. It was the sound of a door being kicked open. It didn't just capture the spirit of the 1950s, it created it. It was the moment that the black and white world of the post-war era began to turn into glorious, chaotic, and loud Technicolor. It was the sound of a young man in a small studio changing the world with nothing but his voice, a guitar, and a feeling. And that was more than all right.